your assessment of events in Kazakhstan and how that potentially weighs on these meetings with Russian officials next week. And more specifically, US officials have raised kind of questions about the CSTO troops deployment there. What specifically is the concern about those troops going in? Is there an implication that the Kazakhstan government hasn't actually invited them in, or how do you see that?
Thanks. So first, we are very concerned about the ongoing state of emergency that exists in Kazakhstan. We've urged authorities to respond appropriately, proportionately, and in a way that upholds the rights of protesters. I spoke with the foreign minister just yesterday. I reiterated our full support for Kazakhstan's constitutional institutions, as well as the absolute importance of respecting human rights, media freedom, including the restoration of internet service, and to dealing with peaceful protests in a way that protects the protesters, upholds their rights, and is consistent with the rule of law. So there has to be a rights-respecting resolution to this crisis. And again, that includes protecting the rights of any peaceful protester. At the same time, we've made clear that we condemn violence committed by anyone, including violence directed at the institutions of the state and government. We very much value the relationship that we have with Kazakhstan. We're watching the situation with real concern, and we are encouraging everyone to find a peaceful resolution and constructive resolution to the situation. When it comes to the CSTO, we have questions about the nature of the request, why it came about. We're seeking to learn more about it. It would seem to me that the Kazakh authorities and government certainly have the capacity to deal appropriately with protests, to do so in a way that respects the rights of protesters while maintaining law and order. So it's not clear why they feel the need for any outside assistance, so we're trying to learn more about it. We certainly call on those peacekeeping forces and law enforcement to adhere to international human rights standards to support a peaceful resolution. And again, we hope the government itself can quickly address the problems, which are fundamentally economic and political in nature. That's what these protests are all about.
Take a final question from VOA Ukrainian, Miroslava Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you so much. On Kazakhstan a little bit, because it looks like Russia is using different tactics right now, going to Kazakhstan and using other countries to join them and calling this peaceful protest. In the same time, the head of, or the leading general who would be leading the operation was the one who was leading occupation of Crimea. What would be U.S. response to that, and do you think this valid for the security, UN security special meeting? And second question on Ukraine, you mentioned yesterday and many times about not speaking about without Ukraine, about Ukraine without Ukraine. How are you planning to fulfill that promise, even in this discussion with Russians next week?
Thank you. Well, let me take the second part first. We are absolutely committed to the principle, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, just as we are fully committed to the principle of nothing about Europe without Europe. At the meeting of the North Atlantic Council of Foreign Ministers today, one of the things that really stood out to me in all of the interventions, and something that Secretary General Stoltenberg mentioned himself in his press conference, was the deep appreciation for the intensive consultations we've been engaged in recent weeks with all of our European allies and partners about the situation in Ukraine and European security more generally, and that will continue. And as it happens, just before coming to see all of you, I was on the phone with my friend and counterpart from Ukraine, the foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba. And that engagement will continue, that coordination, that consultation, that communication will continue throughout this process. When it comes, whether it's the strategic stability dialogue, where we will be talking and have talked, as I did today, to allies and partners in advance, We'll do exactly the same thing after that conversation to read out what transpired. And similarly, when it comes to NATO-Russia, there'll be with regard to Ukraine, there'll be a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council in advance of the NATO-Russia Council. And of course, at the OSCE, Ukraine is a member. So, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And again, on Kazakhstan, I would not conflate these situations. There are very particular drivers of what's happening in Kazakhstan right now, as I said, that go to economic and political matters. And what's happening in there is different from what's happening on Ukraine's borders. Having said that, I think one lesson of recent history is that once Russians are in your house, it's sometimes very difficult to get them to leave.